I'm sorry for doing this. I really am. Enjoy 3 minutes of garbage. It's not garbage. It's just to start the show, people, but I'm really sorry.
Extreme MAGA Republican agenda has nothing to do with the American people. The challenge that we confront is that the extreme MAGA Republican agenda, which is deeply unpopular all across America, the extreme MAGA Republican agenda is all about defaulting on America's debt, shutting down the government, crashing the economy, criminalizing abortion care, cutting Social Security and Medicare, impeaching President Joe Biden, and censuring House Democrats. That's the extreme MAGA Republican agenda. The time
I'm going to pause it here.
For extreme MAGA Republican.
I'm going to pause it just for 1 second. This man has a dead soul, as per the window to his soul, that being his eyes. And appreciate everything that he just said in that last clip is exactly true of the Democrats who have now twice impeached Donald Trump. But no, the threat of trying to impeach Joe Biden makes them the extreme. By what he's saying. Serenity.
Partisanship is over. The time for extreme MAGA Republican brinksmanship is over. The time for extreme MAGA Republican gamesmanship is over. But the House Republican
by three
civil war continues to rage on, miring the Congress in chaos, dysfunction, and extremism. House Republicans have chosen to triple down on the chaos.
1.
Triple down on the dysfunction.
2.
And triple down on the extremism.
3.
House Republicans have selected as their nominee to be the Speaker of the People's House, the Chairman of the Chaos Caucus.
Chairman of the Chaos
Caucus. A defender.
2. Chairman, defender.
In a dangerous way of dysfunction.
And 3.
And an extremist extraordinaire.
It's
people almost uniformly
appreciate what it is, by the way. It's a what's the word? It's not a debate tactic, a public speech tactic. It's a method of hypnosis, a method of brainwashing. Everything in threes. Make it rhyme. It's easy to remember. This guy he's been trained. The only thing he hasn't been trained to do is have a soul.
Agree that the right-wing justices on the Supreme Court are completely and totally out of control. It appears that Justice Alito is an insurrectionist sympathizer.
An insurrectionist sympathizer.
Joined by his right-wing buddy, Clarence Thomas. Jim Jordan is the poster child for MAGA extremism. He is a clear and present danger.
Clear and present danger.
To our democracy.
Clear and present danger.
See, extreme MAGA Republicans want a nationwide abortion ban. The extreme MAGA Republicans want to strip away
now there's only
the ability
another minute of this?
women.
Forget it. Can't do it.
The MAGA extreme wing ideology down the throats of the American people. We are witnessing significant judicial overreach led by right-wing extremists on the Supreme Court.
We must cherish the Constitution, defend democracy, and eradicate extremism in America.
Yeah. Don't drink and vlog. That's a joke, people. What movie was that from with Arnold Schwarzenegger? Don't drink and bake. Good afternoon. This is going to be an amazing Canada-centric live stream with a great guest, Gord McGill, who unfortunately shares the name with the CRO in the Alex Jones trial. McGill is the court receivership officer, court reporter, no, the court restructuring officer in the Alex Jones trial. His last name is McGill, Magill. So darn it, names that have been ruined by politics. Karen, Weinstein, Wiener, although Wiener was always ruined. And McGill is not ruined. I'm being a little harsh. Okay, but it's going to be an amazing talk with Gord McGill, who I guess many people discovered him when he was on with Tucker Carlson relatively recently. I didn't want to get too into it with Gord backstage. I've known of him for a longer time from the Newsweek article where the Coutts 4 finally hit the mainstream in America. The Coutts 4 being the four, at the time, 4 Canadian political prisoners, 2 of whom were subsequently released, had an agreement to plea deal for some non-consequential charges, much less consequential than conspiracy to commit murder on an RCMP officer. I just put out a vlog before this stream started, extreme MAGA Republican Hakeem Jeffries, and I'd like everyone to go watch it. Here's the link to CommieTube, and I'll send you the link to the RumbleTube. It's on Twitter. I'd like everyone to send it to tag Rep Jim Jordan. I think Hakeem Jeffries deserves to be censured for what he tweeted yesterday, in comparison to or in conjunction with what he has been saying very vocally for the last 2 years. So the vlog is out. Viva Frei, Rumble, the Viva Frei Twitter, and vivabarneslaw.locals.com. What else? That's it. You all know me. Viva Frei, David Freiheit, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida Rumbler. We start on YouTube, Twitter, Rumble, and vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We then vote with our feet and our dollar, and we leave CommieTube to go to the free speech platform Rumble. I post all of the streams in their entirety, either on Viva Frei or I've been doing it on Viva Clips. I put them all on podcast on Viva Barnes Law for the People. If you want to support the work that we do, vivabarneslaw.locals.com, $10 a month or $100 a year if you want to get the whole year at a discounted rate. And what else? Viva Frei for some merch if you want. I saw someone driving today. I don't. Live Free was somewhere where I was like, dude, that's my motto, but I'm not wearing the shirt for the first time ever. And I made a friend at a red light. And then I met someone else who said, oh, you FJB edition on your vehicle. Very nice. Very nice. Okay, without further ado, everybody, share the link. Let's get this thing started. But before we do, speaking of FJB, speaking of extreme MAGA Republicans, and speaking of, oh, yeah, people, everybody needs something good in the morning to wake them up. And speaking of parallel economies and voting with our feet, voting with our dollar, and voting with our eyeballs, and supporting companies that don't think we are worthless pieces of rubbish, mere lowly hoi polloi to be governed, to be exploited, and to be told what to do. 1775 Coffee is delicious coffee. It's got a partnership with Rumble, and it's fantastic. And if you're a sleepy Joe who sometimes falls up or downstairs, if you are unable to get your cognitive abilities running in the morning, if you run around calling people extreme MAGA Republicans and you need to have the wits shaken up about you, 1775.com coffee is the best. You need to stop drinking woke liberal coffee and start by drinking Rumble's very own 1775 coffee. Never mind that it'll be the best tasting coffee you've ever had in your life, as in seriously good. It's also ethically sourced from a family farm in the high altitude mountains of Bolivia. So instead of waking up tomorrow drinking your mold-infested, big corporation-owned woke ideology coffee that's probably making you sick with the pesticides they spray on it, and certainly making you mind sick with the mind virus, as Gad Sad calls it, drink Rumble's own 1775 coffee, support freedom of speech, and build a parallel economy that actually values you as a consumer and as a human being. Go to 1775coffee.com/Viva or use promo code Viva. You get 10% off your first order, so make it a big one. They've got medium, dark, and peaberry, and at the risk of getting into the dirty jokes, I like my coffee dark with a lot of cream and a lot of sugar. Or not that much cream and that much sugar, but dark, sweet, mellow, robust. I like tasting my coffee when I drink it, and Rumble 1775 coffee is amazing. You won't regret it. Level up your morning routine with a bag of 1775 coffee. Sleep well at night knowing your hard-earned dollars are going towards supporting freedom-loving creators and freedom-loving corporations. The link is in the bio, in the description. 1775.com/ let me see, is that what it is? 1775.com. 1775coffee.com/Viva. All right. Now we got Gord McGill in the backdrop, who oddly enough looks a lot like Phil Demers. Badass Phil Demers. I love it. I gotta grow up my beard again. I should have shaved it. Okay, we're bringing him in. Gord, are you ready to go? Thumbs up. Bada bing, bada boom, sir.
Good day, Mr. Freiheit. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming. It's been a long time in the making. I started joking around before we went live that I'm going to go back to see who the DMs are, but we were DMing in Twitter, and I'm like, I don't want to get catfished again and give my cell number.
Well, there's been some confusion about my identity and the fact I've been removed from Twitter 4 times. And if anyone's wondering why I'm wearing shades, you'd mentioned the dead soul of this horrible person in New York. I want to make sure your viewers and listeners don't go to the other extreme of like excessive soul. So I'll slowly take off my shades and put on my reading glasses here in a minute. And I just want to make sure everybody's safe.
Gord, it is, but it's an amazing thing. Like, I want people to tell me if I sometimes I'm a little baggy under the eyes, but there's people who you look at their eyes and they're dead. What's your name?
Justin Trudeau.
He's a good faker. He's as good of a faker as you can get. But people who can't fake, Jacinda Ardern, dead soul. Well, Joe Biden's been dead soul for a long time. But like Hakeem, he looks like he's dead, but like Billie Eilish, she might be dead in the eyes just because of lifestyle and not because of a lost soul, but she might have lost her soul because of lifestyle. Gord, okay, I want to shut my big mouth. For those who have never heard of you, I think my crowd knows who you are a lot. Now, hold on, I want to see if are you he says he's a bit laggy. Video sucks for Gord. Okay, so it's not on my end, but whatever, we're going to deal with it. There you go. Now I can see your eyes, and now, yes, you have life in them, sir. Tell people who you are if they don't know who you are.
Yeah. So hi, I'm Gord. Lifelong trucker, proud Canadian, born in Hamilton, Ontario. I now live in the United States. I married an American lady and moved here in 2016. Spent a lot of my life on the road, did 4 seasons up on the ice in the Northwest Territories. I've driven all across Canada. I'm one of the few people around that can say I've driven to Nunavut. Did some road train operating in Australia, hauled logs in New Zealand. I've been to 49 of the 50 states. I've spent most of my life on the road. And in the last few years, since settling down, I have 2 young children now. People have encouraged me to write about my experiences. And I started doing like trucking, labor market economics stuff. And my good friend Oliver Bateman encouraged me to start a Substack. I did. In 2022, when the Freedom Convoy came to Ottawa, I left my job here in upstate New York, drove home to Ottawa, and welcomed the Freedom Convoy in. At that point, I had begun to mess around with Twitter, and a young lady at Newsweek magazine named Batya Unger Sargon watched all my tweets and videos and said, hey, would you like to contribute to Newsweek what you saw when you were in Ottawa? Because like at that point, the avalanche of propaganda had started and the smearing against the Freedom Convoy, as we all know, took place. And so I started writing at Newsweek, and then it kind of snowballed from there. And I've been writing a bunch of different places, started my Substack. And then early last year, I heard about this situation with the Coutts guys, and my Substack went from talking about truck drivers, the trucking industry, and the looming onslaught of robotic trucks to trying to help the Coutts men. And here we are.
Gord, okay, I'm going to unpack a bit of that. I think I could spend an entire show only on the ice driving, the ice trucker driving. I've watched the show a few times. May I ask how old you are?
That show is bullshit. Don't watch it. It's all garbage.
I have no doubt, but
I am 45. I just turned 45 in February.
45 in February. Now I'm going to show this because I just had to Google it just so I could get an appreciation for it. Some people don't appreciate Canada's the second largest country on earth by landmass. And for those who don't know where none of it is, it's up in the Northwest Territories, it's in the Northwest Territories.
Well, yeah, they were split up. The Northwest Territories used to comprise of Nunavut, and somewhere in the late 1990s, they made it into 2 different things. There's a diamond mine I used to haul fuel to from the Northwest Territories into Western Nunavut on an ice road. There's very few people that can say they've done that.
So I'm just looking here because in Montreal, to get to Nunavut, do you cross? Does this freeze over? You see this cursor?
No, Nunavut's not just an island. Nunavut's like this whole thing, the whole Eastern Arctic.
Oh, okay. So you could actually drive from, if you're saying Toronto, holy cows, get that out of there, all the way up here. And I knew.
Well, you have to go through Edmonton in order to drive to Nunavut. You go through Edmonton, you go up to Yellowknife, and then in the wintertime, you go up the Tibbet to Contueto winter road. And at the very north end of that, there's another road that like goes up to these 2 old mines that are technically in Nunavut.
What was if I may ask, what was the diamond mine that you were driving for or driving oil for?
I hauled fuel to Diavik and to BHP Akati, and then to this old Jericho mine site in Nunavut, which I think is on care and maintenance right now. It hasn't been doing anything in a while.
This is amazing. So when you drive to Nunavut, I mean, Forget, I mean, how much it costs and how much you get paid, but what do you do to actually bring your own fuel? Because you have to be self-sufficient the entire time, pretty much.
Well, I mean, you can make it. You can basically make it all the way up there and back on one tank of gas. I mean, this is a big rig, right? Pulling a Super B train. You're being fairly fuel efficient because you're only doing 17 miles an hour the whole way north. You go a bit faster on your way back to Yellowknife. But I mean, if you need to top up, there's a fuel depot at Lac de Gras at one of the camps. You can top up on your way back.
How many gallons or how many liters are in a big rig gas tank?
We were taking, so in what we were delivering, a Super B train will typically, depending on the weight of the truck and the trailers, will carry 48 to 50,000 liters of fuel. The tractor itself, depending on the fuel tanks you have, will carry 800 to 1,000 liters of fuel.
Wow. Okay, that's 800 to 1,000 liters, which is going to be roughly divided by 4 if we go by gallons now. That's wild.
When I was running my last season on the ice, I used to go to Diavik diamond mines back and forth to Yellowknife. I would burn between 580 and 620 liters of fuel.
And at, let's just say, $1.50 a liter.
Oh, it's not $1.50 a liter up there, dude.
Holy! Is it tremendously lonely of an occupation?
No, I think trucking. Actually, some of my best friends are truckers. And again, I've done what I can to go as far as I can in the business. A couple of my best friends are from New Zealand, guys I met up on the ice. There's a lot of camaraderie on the ice. It's sort of the same small group of guys that go up there every year. Mind you, I haven't been up since 2009. Life moves on. That TV show ruined it, as a matter of fact, but that's another story. But trucking's been really good to me. I could do a whole other show for you right now about how the trucking industry is being utterly and completely ruined by the same forces that are also ruining our society in general. But we're here to talk about the Coutts guys.
Well, we got time anyhow, but we'll do the Coutts and we'll get into the rest. But hold on, satisfy my curiosity. When you go on these long trips, I never fully appreciated that truckers don't rent hotels and they don't pitch tents. You sleep in the back of your rig, right? Or you have like a
no. It's you sleep in the bunk. It's sort of your mobile home.
Okay, I never really appreciated that until the trucker convoy, when I'm going in the trucks and people, they're sleeping in them, and I thought they were sleeping in them as like an accommodation to sleep to protest there, but I never realized that. I'm such an idiot sometimes.
Urbanites and professionals that don't work in the material economy, sometimes you're ignorant of these things, and that's okay. Now you know.
Now I know for sure. Now, also for people who are wondering, there is a stereotypical Canadian accent, and oftentimes people say Montrealers don't have it. And I say that the accent is in like the Bob and Doug McKenzie type accent. It is, I wouldn't even say it's an East Coast thing, because you go east to like...
there's so many different Canadian accents. That's the thing. There isn't like a stock standard one at all. Across the great nation of Canada, all 6 time zones, 10 provinces, and 3 territories, there are many different accents.
It's amazing. We'll get into the life of we'll probably have time to get into some more of the life. But now, so you when did you leave Canada, if I may ask?
I haven't lived full time in Canada basically since 2013. I went down to Australia. I lived there for 1.5 years, did some traveling around the world with my wife. And when we came home, we wanted to have children. My mother is no longer with us. My dad's an OTR long haul trucker. So in order to facilitate family and whatnot, we decided to settle where her parents are, which is upstate New York.
So you got out. I mean, your departure from Canada was, first of all, it predated COVID by a long shot, so it wasn't related to that. Wasn't necessarily...
It was before things got really dark.
Well, that's right. So everyone can contextualize. That's actually before Trudeau even got elected. Trudeau was elected in 2015.
Well, he was right around the same time that I immigrated to the U.S. Because I got married. Was when Trudeau was elected, and he's still with us, unfortunately. What are you guys doing?
I had a joke. I can't even say the joke because I don't want people to misinterpret it. Okay, so you're out for a little while. You start looking at what's going on in Canada as a trucker in the United States, because you're still trucking come 2020 when COVID hits?
Yes, I was. In a local capacity, but yes, I was trucking.
Okay. And well, actually, how did COVID affect what you were doing at the time when
it made me work? It made me work even harder and be more of an essential worker than I already was. I was hauling propane. COVID hits in the winter. People around here, a lot of people heat their homes with propane. It's used for a bunch of different applications. and I was basically working 80, 90 hours a week. I obtained, I guess our company got an exemption to hours of service laws, so I could work more hours than what we would normally be allowed under the regulations. And so COVID hits and I went into overdrive. I was working twice as much as the average person. I was working literally 80 hours a week.
Were you crossing the border, or was this?
No, just I was staying fairly local in New York and Pennsylvania.
Okay. How do you said, well, let me just ask this as a Canadian. I don't know if you're a permanent resident, green card, or a citizen at this point, and it's irrelevant for the question, but you're watching Canada basically begin its downfall, although nobody really appreciated it. Let's just say as of 2016. 2015, Trudeau gets elected. He's young, charismatic, and people have hope. 2016, we start seeing things like Bill C-16, and some people start flagging the alarm, sounding the alarm. When did you start really seeing Canada go down the political drain?
Well, it's an interesting question. In hindsight, we could go back to, oh man, who's that guy? George Grant. What's the name of that book? There's this old red Tory guy who wrote this book about Canada's problems way back in the day. But as for me, yeah, it was right around the same time that Peterson became a name with this laws mandating you use certain words and the sort of the woke stuff we all know and love. And yeah, it just things just didn't start seeming right about then.
And well, I guess we'll get to the point of cataclysm. 2020 hits. You're working more, and then you start. I presume you're still paying close attention to Canada as of 2020.
Yes, sir.
Now,
I always pay attention to home. I mean, my dad lives there. My sister lives there. All my cousins and friends I've never stopped being friends with. I might live here, but it's only a 4-hour drive back to where I grew up in Southern Ontario. I go home a lot.
I was going to say, when was the last time you crossed the border?
2 weeks ago.
Am I not projecting, but am I imagining things, or does it feel like you are crossing into another realm of the universe with its own zeitgeist? You can feel the tension, and I would say the unhappiness.
Yeah. Well, you get the stupid MTO signs hectoring you about this or that. Not just wear your seatbelts. During COVID, it was really crazy, and it just driving around the GTA is so crazy. My dad and my sister live on the southern end of it, kind of down in Niagara. But it just doesn't feel right. And then everything is so crazy expensive. And it just you notice when you cross the border, something ain't right. It's just in the air.
GTA, for those who don't know, is the Greater Toronto Area. Gord, okay, we're going to get into it now, but we're going to end this on Twitter and YouTube. It changes nothing from our end, and I'll post the entire full interview to Viva Clips. But we're going to vote with our feet, vote with our dollar, vote with our eyeballs, and get off CommieTube. Hold on. Okay, let's do it. Ending on YouTube now. The link is in the description. Everybody knows that. And I'm going to end on Twitter, not because it's CommieTube, just because I'm going to post the entire interview there afterwards as well. All right, we should be alone now on Rumble and Locals, as we are. All right, Gord. So when do you? I mean, you're not you. When did you get into journalism? Because right now you're officially journalizing, as far as the definition.
Well, yeah, I'm just a guy with an opinion, and I reject the term. I guess maybe technically, sort of. I fell into this. I mean, I started. The first time I ever wrote and published anything on the internet was in 2017. I wrote a blog post for this little place called Glibertarians. Shout out to the Glibs. They asked me to discuss the electronic logging device mandate when the United States government decided that truck drivers no longer had a Fourth Amendment right to privacy or unreasonable search and seizure of where they live, which is their trucks. So now all American truckers and Canadian truckers are heavily surveilled by the state by law. That was the first time I ever wrote and published anything on the internet, which is 7 years ago now.
Okay, very interesting. And when did you start following closely the Coutts 4? I presume you followed the Ottawa protest closely.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The first 4 or 5 articles I wrote for Newsweek were about the Freedom Convoy and what was going on at home. And then I wrote for Unheard in the UK. A couple other places. I've been writing a sort of newer online magazine based in New York now called Compact. I wrote something there in defense of Jeremy McKenzie and the whole debanking thing that happened to him. And one of my aunts is very tight with a lady named Margaret McKay, who's been advocating for the guys basically since the beginning. And she said, you need to pay attention to this case. And I'm like, oh, hey, Auntie Kate, I heard that, those guys got arrested, but like, I didn't know they were still in jail. And she's like, oh yeah, no, they've been held this whole time. And so I spoke with Margaret. I spoke with a bunch of different people out there. And I have my own little podcast called Voice of Gord. It's audio only. As you can tell, I'm not very good at video stuff. Anybody that watched my Tucker interview, I could have done much better, but I'm not a professionally trained media person.
First of all, I that thought never even entered my mind. So if it didn't enter the mind of a neurotic, your interview was perfect. People loved it.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Viva. So,
no, seriously, there was nothing I looked at and said, no, that thought never occurred to me. So it doesn't exist.
Yeah. So I had a bunch of people on my own podcast and started investigating it. My editor at Newsweek heard my interview with Margaret, and she said, will you write about this for us at Newsweek? Shout out to Batya Unger Sargon at Newsweek. That lady just wrote this book called Second Class. It's an examination of what's going on with the working class in America. She has been on it. And she knew right from the word go that what was happening in the Canadian media and what we had to deal with during the Freedom Convoy was all baloney. And she wanted a secondary, like an outsider's perspective on it, or I should say an insider's, because I was there, and has helped me a lot in offering me these opportunities. That's sort of how I got hooked up with Tucker a little bit. And yeah, so I wrote a piece on the Coutts guys in Newsweek, and then it was well received. The guys started calling me from remand, and I wrote a much longer one for Newsweek, which didn't do so well because algorithms and Twitter effery, and who knows, maybe that had something to do with one of Justin Trudeau's internet control bills that was passed last year. I'm not sure, but anyhow, I've now written 4 articles for the guys at Newsweek, and I was invited to speak with Tucker Carlson. That Neil fella over, the Scottish guy at GB News in the UK.
Neil Oliver. Yeah.
Neil Oliver, Jimmy Dore. And again, I'm not doing this because I don't want this to be about me. I want to be able to raise funds, raise awareness, and let people know what's happening to these guys and understand the ramifications of it, right? Like, the railroading of the Coutts guys is real. This trial is a sham. And there's so much deeper going on here, right? Like, your right to protest as a Canadian citizen is under question based on what's going on with the Coutts guys, how it's been prosecuted. Like, you can't protest and have free speech if the government can pick you up from a protest, slap the most ridiculous charges against you, put you in jail for 2+ years without trial, bail, anything, and then the mainstream media comes along and am I allowed to swear on here, Viva?
Oh, fuck yeah. Sorry.
The mainstream media in Canada are fucking cowards. Every single fucking one of you bastards that's ignored this trial and or smeared the men and repeated the talking points from Trudeau are fucking cowards, and you should all be fired. Sorry. All right. Now I got that out of the way.
No, but I'll take it one step further. I won't call them treasonous. I'm not sure that they're cowards. I actually think they are closer to evil than cowardice. Unless and some people think that evil and cowardice are very closely intertwined, philosophically, ideologically. They're paid to lie. And so they're
doing their job for sure. They're doing their job.
They might be doing it out of cowardice because if they get fired, they have to go and succeed on their own merits, which they could never do. They might be doing it out of evil, or they might just be doing it out of sincere, what's the word of people who are genuine believers, true believers. But so you attended the protest?
I came to Ottawa when the Freedom Convoy entered the city at the end of January in 2022. I could only stay the first week and I had to come back home and get to work, but I started writing about it immediately afterwards. Okay.
And so we don't need to relive the trucker protest. Everybody who's on this channel now lived it like in real time with me. It was wild. It was amazing how it
by the way, now that we're looking at each other face to face, your reporting on that was excellent, sir. And thank you for doing the correct job and showing people what was actually going on contra the lies of CBC, CTV, all the papers. Thank you very much.
Well, the funniest thing is, other than the smear that was at W5 says, Viva Frei provides a filterless view. When I went down there, it's like there's always that fear, and you're like, what if we do see Nazi flags? And what if we do see people pissing on the cenotaph? And then are people going to get mad at me for, why would you show that, Viva? You remember when the Middle Eastern kid was stomping on the pride flag and the clip went viral? And I don't remember, I forget where I mean, I know who put the clip up, but that's always the question is, do you want to be the person that captures a moment that's negative or whatever, that reverberates negatively, and you're the one who did it for good or for bad? When I went down there, I didn't know if I was going to capture bad stuff, confirm what the media was saying, and it was a risk. And if it was there, I didn't want people getting mad at me, but whatever. So we all saw what we saw. It was, in hindsight, at the time, in retrospect, even after the most meticulous analysis, the most peaceful, wonderful protest ever, violently suppressed.
Absolutely.
And then they went effing crazy. Now, I'm going to bring this up because I love it. I just love bringing this up so people can understand how outrageous. You Google Coutts weapons and look what you get. Global News showing this image of the stockpile of weapons. Global News. Okay. New York Times, Freightways, CTV News, Canadian Anti-Hate Network. Who else? I mean, well, I don't see CBC here, but the men were arrested. I forget the date now, but it was during the protest, and they were arrested on the pretext of, or at least on the excuse of, conspiring to murder an RCMP officer.
Correct.
As the investigation is ongoing, they're literally putting out evidence porn, like straight out of
it's complete propaganda. So you will know that there was a big document dump that came out yesterday or the day before. I believe the gentleman in question is a Twitter anonymous user named Buck McYoung. And I have been filtered these documents. A few people have been filtered them, and we're analyzing them now. And it reiterates what we knew, that photo was basically propaganda. You have to remember, one of the Coutts 4 guys, this fellow named Jerry Morin, who was barely at Coutts at all, none of his legally, perfectly reasonable firearms to own were there. Neither was he. Jerry Morin got arrested the day after everybody else on his way to work up near Calgary, right? And again, barely at Coutts at all. None of his guns were there. He was one of the guys that was released in early February of this year, almost 2 years in prison with the worst of the worst in Calgary, periods of solitary confinement, like somewhere between 80 and 100 days, right? No trial yet, no guilt, no evidence, solitary confinement, which most countries consider as a form of torture. And nothing. There's nothing, right? 10 of those guns in the documents that were released, 10 of those guns were found on private property off-site, not at the protest site in Coutts, unloaded, safely stored, registered, whole 9 yards, everything perfectly legal. But throw them all together, let's scare the crap out of everybody, right? Now, they might not actually make it to trial as evidence. There's been some arguments and applications about whether or not they're even admissible evidence, given what the RCMP has done. But, it remains that the fix was in from the beginning with this case. Go ahead, Viva.
No, I'm going to save the image just so I can bring it up again. I want to bring it up in higher res, but until I can, no crap. Hold on a second. Let me just show this. Like, I know a little bit about firearms. I took my course. I owned a 12 gauge once upon a time up in Canada. They show you,
which means you have a PAL. You have a possession acquisition license. So another item from this document dump shows that the RCMP were investigating persons of interest, and how they were determining to find persons of interest is they were going through the gun registry and they were going through the PAL registry. So basically, they were literally like trolling and trying to dig up anybody in that neighborhood or suspected of being at that protest. If you had a possession and acquisition license, the RCMP was using that as an excuse to investigate you while you were there.
Did I have a PAL? I only had a license for the unrestricted long arms.
That's a PAL, possession acquisitions.
When this picture came out at the time, and then people who know better were saying, like, first of all, I can't. There's a freaking machete in here, all right? Like this is what you have in your garden when you go camping. They look scary, especially the ones, the black ones. They always look scary. People think that these are like machine guns.
All perfectly legal.
All perfect. Is there any? Do we know? I think there was a discussion as to whether or not one of the firearms in this image was not legally owned or was not legal in Canada. Do you know anything about that?
I do not believe anything in this image was illegal to own in Canada. Another thing people need to know is like 4 of them, they still don't know who the owners are. And as it relates to the Coutts 4 guys, there was 13 people arrested those first 2 days. And why pick on these 4 guys, right? If you start looking into what went on, the communications between sort of Big Cheese RCMP and the Crown in Ottawa versus the local guys in Alberta, it starts looking like they were on a hunt for something, anything to justify the invocation of the Emergencies Act.
They arrest the 4. They arrest 13 men. 4 were the ones who remained in jail for over 2 years. 2 subsequently pleaded to innocuous charges. None
of the original charges. Interesting how the Crown dropped conspiracy to murder. Yep, nope, gone. Mischief, gone. Firearms handling charges, gone. All that stuff.
After 2 years in remand, which is not even in jail because remand detainees have fewer rights than actual convicted prisoners.
Correct. That's correct.
When that picture came out, and everyone should also remember just how closely that image resonates with or resembles the one that the FBI dropped of the Trump Mar-a-Lago raid. Like they splay out all of this orgy of evidence after having quite clearly tinkered with it. Those firearms belong to various people, apparently all lawful in Canada. Other people are saying, how are you displaying the evidence during an investigation that's ongoing? This was at the time of the arrest. None of it is individualized. None of it is protected in terms of DNA, in bags, from what I understand.
Nope.
Was there, in the document stuff, I haven't been following that. Was there any discussion about that? Or was there any discussion as to how this image was comprised and published?
Not necessarily in documents, but like we can infer the RCMP knew that 10 of the firearms in that image, legally owned, legally purchased, perfectly legal, registered, no ammo in them, nothing. So, like, they're trying to set a narrative, and it was a propaganda photo because what you have here is they're trying to fight this in the court of public opinion. Oh. They're trying to smear the men because there's actually no evidence. Guns are tools, and you have to have intent, right? You can't just say you have this item and you're going to do this with the item. You have to have intent. You have to be able to prove intent. Like, you're a lawyer, you know all this stuff.
Oh, no. Well, first of all, it looks like, I mean, I was trying to zoom in as much as I could, that these firearms, well, even the ammunition is in boxes. I mean, it's properly stored. I was trying to zoom in on one of the vests because they said, I think they refer to it as ballistic vests. I'll check that out just to confirm myself. But they could be fly fishing vests for all anybody knows. So they arrest the men. They were in 2 years of remand, the 4 of them. 2 of them copped a plea deal where they dropped the conspiracy to murder charges. And then the hypothesizing at the time was maybe that one of the 2 who copped the deal were going to plead or threw the other 2 under the bus. If you could, I mean, flesh this out.
That's utter and complete nonsense. And there's going to be stuff that stems from that. They took advantage of Jerry Morin again. Solitary confinement, kept with the worst of the worst, gang, murderers, rapists, all the bad guys in Calgary. He was kept separate from the rest of them at Calgary remand. Had a very hard time of it. And yeah, I don't want to get too much into the weeds with that because there's going to be some ongoing things, but that's basically a false confession and everybody knows it.
So those 2 got out how long ago? That was over
February 6th, 2024.
February 20. I say it's over the summer because in February it's still hot and warm in Florida, so it felt like the summer. And now the remaining 2 who are
Tony Oleanick and Chris Carbert.
Their trial started, and now this is where things are getting
June.
scandalous.
Hey, so for your viewers, Tony Oleanick and Chris Carbert's trial finally got started after all the pretrial hearings, after all the delays, mostly caused by the Crown, doing their whole disclosure dumps at the last possible minute. There's people online trying to blame Tony and Chris for this or their lawyers. No. A lot of this is hung on the Crown. June 6, 2024, 80 years to the day of the D-Day landings. What a coincidence.
It's amazing.
There's a new beachhead in the fight for Canadian freedoms, and it's in Lethbridge, Alberta, rather than Juno Beach in Normandy.
Now, Jason Levine has been attending the trial, I think, every day, right? He's up there living through this, and he's been reporting on it as well. So, I mean, tell us what's been going on in the trial. I know there's layers of knowledge. Levine,
there's layers. There's some stuff that can be repeated. Like there's all these different publication bans. Some of them have to do like as far as the most recent moves in the trial, or whether or not the jury is in there to hear it. So they're still litigating some of the pre-trial stuff after the trial has gone on. And then there's voir dire, there's trials within trials. It gets extremely technical. I've been speaking with people also going there that have been helping the guys in the background. The amount of effort, paperwork, filing documents, running around. There's like a couple of people, never mind the lawyers. There's a couple of people working for Tony and Chris who basically have a second full-time job now, you know, and they deserve a lot of credit for this. Danielle Sledity and Nikki Tom. And basically, like, there's some things we can talk about, but like the publication ban, there's a bunch of them. Okay. And so as the trial is proceeding, there's some stuff we can't talk about now, even though you and I are both in the United States, because like, we don't want to like tick off the prosecution because like we're so close to this sham trial actually coming to completion. Letting stuff out that's going to piss off the prosecution is probably not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I spoke with those guys earlier this morning while I was still at work, and the families are very happy about some of the things they've heard the last couple of days, specifically Tony Oliak's mother, and it's going well. Justice Lebrenz is, without putting any, too many details that would get us in trouble, I think he understands there's a lot of smearing going on here, and we'll leave it at that.
I only know what is public, so I can't even accidentally disclose something that I'm not allowed disclosing on which there's a publication ban unless someone else violated it, and that's how I learned it through Twitter. Oh, sweet merciful goodness, what was the most recent revelation, which was the shocking, the recording of the cops. Now, I've been saying this for a while, and I'm not going to partake in any infighting among people who I like and respect, even if I vehemently disagree with them on certain things. I thought these charges were bullshit from the beginning, like the bullshit of the highest order.
Yeah, anybody that was paying attention to this and looking into it properly should have come to that conclusion.
And now there were arguments as to, the charges themselves are very serious, and that's how they get away with it. It all, from what I understood, stemmed from, as far as the evidence goes, the men had guns. The men had guns because they live in Alberta, and their tools. Not if you're in the big city, you're not hunting deer, shooting coyotes, and whatever. The bulk of the evidence, as far as I understood it, the conspiracy to murder an RCMP officer came from two female undercover RCMP officers who sat down for a few beers with, I forget which two of the gentlemen.
Tony Oliak, one.
And one gentleman, Tony Oliak. Okay, fine. And I don't know how many beers he had. I don't know, how he said what he said, but I think we got a few more details now. For whatever the reason, not recorded. And the woman went back, and I don't know what she looks like, if she's a young, attractive woman he's trying to impress. We don't know who that RCMP officer is yet, right? Correct?
Correct. We don't.
I know what I'm imagining in my head. They have a meeting. He allegedly admits to this conspiracy to put a slug in the head of an officer. She goes back. She's not recording this. She goes back and takes her notes. That was it. And I was like, okay, this is.
Yeah, the entire thing hinges on heresy. Right. And so if you're a proper journalist, I'm just an amateur. I'm just a guy that fell into this. If you're a proper journalist, you have to understand the levels of evidentiary sort of priority here. Right. And there's nothing to back this up, which then leads to more questions. Why is it that these men who were basically pointed to by the heavies in Ottawa, from what I understand, the RCMP in Alberta were mostly accommodating and doing their jobs and very professional for the most part. A lot of this is coming from further up the food chain. So if the people further up the food chain are listening to the fantasies of taxpayer-funded bullshit from the likes of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, who my good friend Merrick at the Good Old Boys podcast, check that out. You can go get yourself a shirt at White Boys Summer Apparel. Shout out Good Old Boys. I've been on their show a bunch of times. They're great. Anyway, Merrick refers to the Canadian Anti-Hate Network as the Northern Poverty Law Center.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
And they concoct these fantasies. They pull in these Diagolon guys. All of it. The whole thing is baloney. But Trudeau's getting told what he wants to hear. Their incidents response group, the higher ups in the RCMP who are like politically motivated and insulated from reality. So they start like looking around for stuff. Well, isn't it weird how if you believe that these heavily armed, extremist right-wingers are just waiting to kill RCMP officers, you would send a couple of young, unarmed, remember, these undercover officers went into the Coutts protest site, no sidearms, no recording devices. If this is so important that your invocation of the Emergencies Act, the only shred of violence that you believe is detectable or that you can prove is detectable across all of the freedom convoys and all of the protest sites is at this spot, why would you not have that recorded? Right? Now, and since the trial has started and some of the publication bans have like dropped off and there's been a little bit more mainstream media interest, mainstream media reporters are repeating the claims from these undercover officers while not telling anybody in their articles about the countervailing evidence or the fact there's no recordings. This is hearsay evidence. The media are lying to people by not telling you that. It's called lying by omission. I'm sure you're quite well aware of this.
Well,
right?
I love it. Before you had a Freudian slip where you said heresy instead of hearsay, but it's so it's so bad it's heresy. No, because it is
both.
Because everybody, life can only be understood backwards, but must be lived forwards. At the time, these arrests were made in the early stages of the Ottawa protest in freaking Coutts. It's like I don't know, 2,000 kilometers away. It served as the basis. I remember walking the streets and I was looking in the chat. Everyone's like, he's ignoring Jeremy McKenzie. He's a controlled opposition, and I had no idea who Jeremy McKenzie was. I had no idea that when people were saying, they're talking about Diagolon in the MP's public, speech and debate, whatever the hell they think they're doing there. They're mentioning Diagolon, and I had no idea what Diagolon was. And then, you understand this now in retrospect. They literally, at the time, everyone's like, aha, they fell for a joke of a meme Diagolon, and they think it's a real extremist group. What a bunch of idiots. It's unclear whether or not they even fell for it or they used it as the pretext and they had their machine turn Diagolon into something that it never was, so they could then go after these guys, tie them to Diagolon, because when they got arrested, they said one of them had a patch on their vest that was a Diagolon insignia, so he's a member of this violent, accelerationist, white supremacist militia, and that's how they use this.
Which is a bunch of fans of a podcast. It's
a load of horse shit. Everybody knows it. Everybody's met Jeremy on my channel thoroughly in extensive detail. You can't fake it for that long with someone who asks all the questions under the sun. So they use that entire thing as a pretext to invoke the Emergencies Act. They had to build up this story. And then when they had the commission with Rouleau, and the only linchpin that allowed Commissioner Rouleau, that corrupt hack as far as I'm concerned now, to exonerate Trudeau, was this act of violence, this threat of murder of an RCMP officer out of Coutts.
So speaking of Rouleau and his ruling and the fact he's a hack and all the rest of it, isn't it interesting? We're now going through this trial 28 months past February 2022. Justice Rouleau did not... How is it he even knew any of this was true, given that the pre-trial hearings didn't even start? How is it that he cites this knowing whether or not any of it's true? So this is another reason why I think the media and the government don't want to talk about this, because when Tony Oleanick and Chris Carbert walk free, and I am confident that they're going to, because there's no case here, despite any reservations about the jury, whatever, they're getting out. They have to. End of story. That's going to present a question about the POEC ruling. Is Ottawa going to revisit it? I don't know. But like, if we're supposed to go along with this pretend BS about this, liberal democracy and everybody gets a right to say what they want, you're allowed to protest, and then you see what happened here, and the highest justice in the land at the POEC basically makes a ruling before we know anything upon which this hinge factor is even true.
It's a point that cannot be understated, and I'll steelman it just to explain how they will steelman it. They had Jeremy McKenzie testifying from prison. He was arrested, 2 weeks of solitary in Nova Scotia, hauled off on a nationwide warrant to Saskatoon, testifying before the committee from prison, like freaking Hannibal Lecter, and they got that optic. To steelman it, the argument will be it was not a trial, it was not a court of a law, therefore it's not even binding on the court system. Hence, how a subsequent court came down with a ruling that sort of contradicted Rouleau's exoneration, pat on the back of Trudeau. So they say, well, it was never intended to be a judicial ruling, a judicial court system. And so they didn't need beyond a reasonable doubt evidence in order to factor in the Coutts threat to justify invoking the Emergencies Act. But once you understand what it all was, it was a house of cards that people had been persuaded and brainwashed into wanting to believe. Canadians, not the ones.
Yeah, they needed an enemy. Everybody needed a bad guy. The propaganda, the psyops that they had unleashed on Canadian citizens, the literal medical apartheid, the scapegoating and outgrouping of anybody who dissented or decided to make their own healthcare choices. They needed a bad guy. They had to have a bad guy to justify everything they had done. And the Coutts 4 guys have been their bad guy. I'm so convinced of their innocence. I think Stephen Johnston, the Crown prosecutor, oh, by the way, one of the people I was talking to today just got documents from a FOIPOP request about communications between the RCMP and Jason Kenney. Daily meetings of the people between Coutts and Jason Kenney's office. Guess who's in there basically directing traffic with the RCMP? Crown prosecutor Stephen Johnston. You're not allowed to do that. You remember all this nonsense about an envelope and accusations of crime fraud as
Absolutely.
Tony's previous lawyer, Tony Ralston, had made? Well, those documents are being processed now, and Stephen, whatever. He don't look good. Like, none of this looks good at all.
Just for those who don't know, FOIPOP in Canada is a FOIA request. It's freedom of information and privacy. Freedom of
protection of privacy
and protection of privacy. And I'm trying to Google Stephen Johnson just so I can see what that guy looks like.
Another soulless goon like the fella you opened the show with.
Well, and who was the one that was prosecuting Tamara Leach, the Crown prosecutor, who was trying to get her back in jail. I forget his name. Another man I cannot stand.
They're political. So something else that we need to bring up here, okay? So we have a problem with the judiciary. The guy who's overseeing the trial in Coutts right now, from all reports I've got, Justice David Lebrenz has been fair. The people who support the Coutts men are expressing to me that they feel he's doing great. Chris Carbert denied bail a second time. This lady in Alberta, Justice Jonah Kubik. There was a report in the National Post last year about how 77% of the judiciary in Canada are dues-paying members and appointees of the Liberal Party of Canada, right? You have Richard Wagner, the big cheese of the Supreme Court, giving an interview to some newspaper or radio station in Quebec, claiming that the Freedom Convoy was anarchy. Hold on a minute, dude. You're a judge. You're supposed to oversee trials. You're not supposed to be giving your opinion on things. Same with former Supreme Court Justice Beverly McLaughlin. The judiciary in Canada are acting in ways that are unprofessional, and they're not supposed to, right? They're weighing in on political issues before anything goes through the courts, right? And we have like the Coutts guys, right? Denied bail, right? None of them had a criminal record. Chris Carbert apparently might have had like a underage drug possession thing. Big deal. No criminal record, no history of violence, no threat to flee the country, nothing. Denied bail, kept in remand for 2 years. In 2018, Trudeau's government passes this bill, legislation, I think it was C-75 or C-25, which massively expanded bail, which is why people who've like legitimately shot police officers, rapists, the worst criminals ever, Out. See you later. Come back when trial starts. Coutts 4 guys? No. This is why we call them political prisoners, because that's exactly what's going on here. In a country where all of these violent assholes get bail and these 4 guys with no records don't. What's that all about?
I'll just to highlight one example. Man accused of hit and run at Manitoba Freedom Convoy protest granted bail, barred from entering Winnipeg. The crazed lunatic who drove his van into protesters, he was granted bail. These guys, because they knew it was bull crap from the beginning. Some people fell for it, and others didn't. But they were in remand for 2 years during this Commissioner Rouleau's hearing, where they had not yet had their trial. Which I don't know how close we have to get to the what's the name of the Jordan motion, the delay within which to have a trial and speedy trial normally.
Yeah, it's the Jordan ruling. So basically, if something doesn't. If a trial doesn't get underway for federal cases within 30 months, it gets stayed.
Yeah, it's 3-ish, 2.5, 3 years. We weren't within that realm when the commission went down, but what you had was absolutely abusive, abhorrent, atrocious pretrial detention of, but for the charges, men who have never committed a violent crime in their lives. Whereas the guy who runs over protesters at a trucker rally gets granted bail, and I don't care how expensive it was, he was nonetheless granted bail. So all of these charges stem from this meeting with this cop, where what was just released, that apparently there were 2 female officers at the bar. One of them wrote down in her recollection, she talked about what he was suggesting they were going to do to an officer, and that she took from his silence that he meant shoot them, and that the other cop didn't have the same impression.
So it's funny you mentioned the silence, because there's a lot of inferences. So something that's going on here is like, Tony Oleanick plays in a band, and there was a number of different country singers and people that came down to Coutts to perform for the crowd. There was a request for instruments, and the RCMP claims, no, that means guns. There was a request for hockey equipment for the kids to play road hockey while they were down in Coutts. No, that means guns. They're inferring things, right? So you understand this term that came in vogue on the American left, probably in the 80s or 90s, called dog whistling.
I was talking about it. I was just talking about it today. Right.
Well, so they're trying to say that it's an attempt to take plain spoken language that means what it actually means and try to infer that it means something else, right? So that's exactly what the RCMP and the Crown are doing. They're taking plain spoken language and then saying it means something else, but they've got no evidence to back up what the something else is, their claims. There's nothing there at all. And how is this a fair trial when we have to take the fantasies of the Crown, which are based on opposite interpretations of verbiage that was not actually recorded, and then make a judgment on this? Like, what's going on?
My concern in all of this is we're presuming knowledge of everybody. So chat, you'll let me know if we're going too fast on certain things. Part of the allegations against the 4, or at least I forget who the 2 of the 4, was that they were bringing a bag of weapons to Coutts. It was disguised as, I believe, hockey sticks and an amplifier, which the Crown, I don't know where I learned this from, because I don't know where the publication bans were, but this is public knowledge, and as much as I have it, because I have no non-public knowledge, they were going to bring an amplifier, a guitar, and hockey sticks, something along those lines, which they said the amplifier was bullets and the guitar was guns. Amplifier was ammo, guitar was guns, the A and the G, they got the nice alliteration. And bottom line, there was music and amplifiers and guitars there, and there were kids with hockey sticks. So the unrecorded meeting where she got the impression, apparently one of the 2, but not both of them, that he was giving the wink, wink, nudge, nudge, nod, that he was going to shoot a police officer, and that the bags of hockey sticks or guitar and amplifier was a code for weapons. And that's what they went with. That's what they locked these guys up for 2 years with.
Yes, they spent 2 years of their lives in remand. Now, I want to bring something else up that I brought up on Tucker Carlson, and your friend Jeremy McKenzie talks about a lot. A young fellow by the name of Omar Khadr, who, whatever you think of that situation, taken to Afghanistan by his dad, happened to survive a firefight with Americans, stood accused of killing an American medic. Whatever. I'm not here to weigh in on that. All I am going to weigh in on is that we never stopped hearing about that guy for years. They begged Stephen Harper and shamed him to try and get that kid out of Guantanamo Bay because they knew what was going on in Guantanamo Bay was torture, right? And, think what you will of these arguments. The media made Omar Khadr a household name. Dead silence about the Coutts 4. 2 of the Coutts 4 men were kept in solitary confinement. All 4 of them have been denied necessary medical treatment. Their advocate, Nikki Tom, has written letters, provided supporting evidence. Like, I can't see how someone isn't investigating Alberta Health Services, the people who administer the prisons, for these guys' treatment. It is atrocious, right? Not even convicted yet. Merely accused of things by undercover officers with nothing to back it up, right? This is like Guantanamo Bay being brought back to Canada, and our media are completely silent about it. I have tried. I have emailed the National Post. I've tried to, when Rex Murphy was still alive, I tried to get through to his people. It must have got filtered out. I've talked to mainstream podcasters, emailed all them. I had one guy, I don't want to start a piss fight online. I had one guy email me back and say, "Oh, there's nothing here. We don't need to talk about this." All right? I'm like, what do you mean? Your right to protest and your right to freedom of speech are in question because of this trial, and you want to tell me there's nothing here?
It is shocking because it's almost worse than January 6th. At least at January 6th, you had some abject or objective violence. Whoever provoked it and whatever, whether or not it was exacerbated, there was some people committing violence. You can't deny that. There was none of that in January 6th, and there wasn't even anybody actually conspiring to do violence behind closed doors. It's like it's made up out of whole cloth, straight out of a movie about communist Russia. Oh, look what we found here. You admitted to supporting the enemy. No, I didn't. We have a letter written in your hand, and it's written. They're writing it in front of them. It's that bad that these men, the 4 guys, they were. I mean, the fact that I
call Canada the Maple Gulag for a reason.
I call it the Iron Rainbow. I like the maple. We'll put a poll out, see who likes better between the Maple Gulag and the Iron Rainbow. So the 2 men that got out who pleaded in February, they were in jail for over 2 years. I'm sorry.
Almost. They got out within a week of being arrested, so it was almost 2 years for them.
Do you recall offhand what they pleaded to? I remember one was it improper storage of a firearm?
Yeah, Chris Lysak. Improper handling of a pistol. Okay. Jerry Moore. Jerry Moore. Well, improper handling of a pistol outside of the Coutts thing would be a fine and no jail time. It's not that big of a deal. It's just okay, cool. You didn't pay attention. You didn't follow your travel permit for carrying your pistol around if you have a restricted firearm. Right? Restricted firearms are subjected to travel permits. Okay, cool. Great. Pay the fine, whatever. Under normal circumstances, that would not get you in jail for 2 years. Right? And again, Jerry Morin, they made a bunch of stuff up. I think from what I understand, his lawyers knew it was BS. The Crown knew it was BS. And they just abused him for having been in jail for 2 years and, psychological trauma. It's basically a false confession.
Wow. All right. You're following the trial via whom these days?
There's I obviously Danielle Sledity's in there. A couple of Twitter folks online, Kyle Cardinal, Stevland Ambrose. There's a great guy in BC. You guys should follow named Amazing Zoltan. He did a real deep dive into all these documents. Robert Kraychik from Rebel News.
Yep.
So good for all those guys. And, we have people. The question here is, where are the mainstream media, right? So we have some woman who contributes to the Globe and Mail, and then this other guy named Bruce Graveland or Bill Graveland or something who writes for the Canadian Press, and they just repeat the accusations of the undercover officers verbatim, in the articles, they've done a couple of short articles since the trial started, and they don't tell you that there's nothing to back this up. They don't tell you that there's no recordings. They don't tell you that their superior officers just were like, hey, go and case this joint where there's people we suspect are going to kill you. And by the way, no sidearm and no recording device. Just go. They're going to kill you, but don't defend yourselves. I mean, seriously, they're not asking these questions. Nobody's been asking these questions for 2 years. There's been a code of silence around the Coutts thing. And again, they have to have a bad guy. The Coutts guys have been designated as enemies of the state, and everyone believed the worst possible things about them, the maximally negative interpretations of things Tony Oleanick is alleged to have said. A funny thing about this, right? They kept Tony Oleanick and Chris Carbert in. Most of what's gone on in trial does not mention Chris Carbert at all. Chris Carbert's there along for the ride because in order to get a charge of conspiracy to stick, you need 2 people. Everything they've presented in trial is about Tony Oleanick. Again, nothing to back it up, no recordings. Tony Oleanick's a very outgoing guy, maybe a little bit naive about the situation he was in. Whatever. That doesn't mean that you take 2 guys and destroy their and their families' lives.
Kenzie Kraken had asked, it was from a while back. Are you raising funds for the Coutts?
Yeah, so I started to Give Send Go when I knew I was going to be going on Tucker Carlson's show. Basically, the whole reason I'm talking to anybody about this is to get money for their lawyers. When you're fighting the state, you need money. Go to Give Send Go, search Trudeau's political prisoners on Give Send Go, and thus far, I think I've raised 47 grand. I got a direct phone call from one of the big cheese VPs at Give Send Go. Normally, they don't have phone customer service. And I said to them, there's been some effery with some of the fundraising stuff with the other folks, and people are afraid to donate because of what happened to the Freedom Convoy donations.
Mm-hmm.
I need some assurance. And he explained to me that as long as you have it designated as legal funds, the government can't touch it. And also the Emergencies Act and all of the extra financial system powers the government gave themselves are not in play right now. So if you donate to Give Send Go, totally safe. If you're in Canada and you want to do Interac email money transfers, Operation Rescue at protonmail.com. These guys are going to need tons of help. There's been some stuff with one of the previous lawyers that got fired and a bunch of money disappeared down that hole. I'm not trying to cast aspersions on lawyers, but this stuff is complicated, right? And we need all the help we can get. Trudeau's political prisoners, Give Send Go. Go find it. If you have any money left to spare, I understand we live in the Joe Biden and Justin Trudeau North American shit economy right now. Everything, the dollar has been devalued because of decades of poor economic policies. And then, Biden inflation, Trudeau inflation, everything's gone to hell. I get it. We might not have money to donate, but if you've got some and you want to see these guys get through this trial, we would appreciate every penny. Every dollar counts.
What's this? How long is their trial scheduled for?
I think it's going into July. It's supposed to wrap up at the end of July, but hey, look at Chris Barber and Tamara Litch, longest mischief trial in history. It might not wrap up then. Who knows what's going to come down the pipe, right?
And they're in jail in the meantime. When was the last time you spoke with them?
Tony Oleanick called me on the weekend twice, and I heard from Chris Carbert a couple of weeks before that.
All right, here. I'm doing my civic duty. Duty. I'm in there. Okay, everyone. I've shared the link.
Thank you, Viva. That's great.
Dude, God, I say Godspeed. It's impossible to keep up with the plight of all of these victims of government abuse. It's atrocious. Anyways, look, it's not even a question of feeling vindicated. What they've successfully done, and they've done this. Trudeau's done the same thing in Canada that Biden, with his over weaponization of all things legal, has done with the
right. So you know this term lawfare, right?
Oh yeah.
And they're doing it against President Trump, and this is something I mentioned in my Newsweek article. It's not just the Coutts guys. It's not just Chris Barber and Tamara Leach. There are hundreds of people who took part in the Freedom Convoy. On my podcast, Voice of Gord, R in parentheses. Go find it. Go to my Substack, Autonomous Truckers. I spoke with a woman that Chris Barber hooked me up with named Christine DeCare. Her and her boyfriend went to Ottawa, did nothing wrong. She was charged with all the stupid shit that charged with every other protester with. Beat it in court, was acquitted, the Crown is appealing her acquittal. There's just dozens of these people who like did nothing wrong and got charged with all this garbage, and then they're having to go back and fight. Guy Meester, one of the truckers at the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa, my friend Donna Laframboise. Everybody, go check out her book when it comes out. It's called Thank You Truckers. She is documenting the stories of everyone who took part. That she's been traveling the country for 2 years in preparation to write this book. She's on Substack. She dribbles out little stories. They're super heartwarming. And I keep harping on about this, about the Freedom Convoy, is that people were so connected and so loving and like just doing such a great thing. And Donna is documenting this. One of the truckers she talked to is this guy named Guy Meester from, I think he's from New Brunswick or Nova Scotia. He has had to go back to Ottawa 9 times to deal with his court cases. All he did was had an old R model Mac parked on the street. He didn't do anything else. He was just there protesting, and they keep dragging him back to court. He did nothing.
His name is Guy. That's really funny. I mean, only just his name is Guy Meister or Guy Meister. Correct. Which almost sounds like Guy, Mr. Guy. Like his name is Mr. Guy.
Mr. Guy.
Yeah, I just checked it out. He was on the JCCF website. No, it is outrageous because what these powers have done is make everyone take a step back and decide, do I want to even attend a public protest or a public rally? Because they might unilaterally declare it unlawful and ruin my life for exercising my constitutional right. And
your once possible charter protected rights, which have been like flushed down the Ottawa River and out the St. Lawrence, and they're gone now.
In Canada, it was a charter right, which is, bequeathed by the king, although it says God, in the charter. In America, it was a God-given right that now it seems that Joe Biden...
This is the difference. I think people... So for your American listeners and for Canadians who didn't pay attention to history, the United States Constitution starts out with the presupposition that your rights are natural, granted to you by God, and the Constitution is about regulating the government and telling them what they can't do. What you can do is assumed. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada is exactly opposite. It grants the citizens, the people, under the rule of the king, here are the rights we grant you. It's 180 degrees the opposite way, and people need to understand that.
No, it is amazing. It's like people now have to think twice. Do we go and do we exercise our God-given right to protest? All right, so that is it for the Coutts 4, or at least the Coutts 2 now that are remaining. Have you spoken with Chris Lysak, or is it Morin was the other one who got
Jerry
it?
Morin? Yep. Jerry Morin's keeping his head down and just trying to restart his old business. Chris Lysak, I guess, was showing up at court in Lethbridge fairly frequently. Again, those guys have gone through a very traumatic experience, and they're keeping themselves to themselves. They're not speaking publicly, as far as I know, and fair play to them. We also have this ongoing trial, right? Like the 2 guys that they were co-accused with are still in there. So it's probably wise for them to not be saying anything publicly right now. And obviously, they went through something none of us will ever have to go through, God willing. No more people get arrested. Like, I wonder about that sometimes. Every time I come back to Canada, I cross the border, I'm like, man, they're going to run my name and I'm going to get pulled in. Thank God it hasn't happened yet. I probably had more trouble with PHAC because I'm not vaccinated. I made my own healthcare choices when I went to Ottawa, crossed the border at Thousand Islands Bridge in Kingston, told PHAC to go to hell, and I went to Ottawa on my merry way, which everybody should have done.
I have the same reflexes, and Quebec is even worse than the rest of Canada, where I don't know if they passed a piece of legislation which basically prohibits harassment of politicians if it makes it difficult to do their job. What was I just about to ask? Oh, let me do this actually, because there's two Rumble rants. I'll just get these. I noticed the purple color. We got fantasies of taxpayer funded bullshit, says Sammy. Holy crap, I love this guy. More of him, please. Take my money. Thank you very much. King of Biltong says, good afternoon from Anton's Meat and Eat. 10% off with code Viva10 for your Biltong on Biltong USA, AntonUSA.com for purchases that qualify for free shipping. Else use code Viva for free shipping. And for those of you who don't know what Biltong is, South African beef
cured meat. Yeah.
It's amazing.
One of my best friends is a guy who lives in Uxbridge, Ontario now. His name is Brett Hawes. He's been working with Children's Health Defense previously. and he was just at this big meeting in Geneva where they were like trying to figure out the new worldwide health treaty. I can't keep up with all this stuff. Like the globalists and the international corporate gangsters like just keep coming at us. So pardon me if I don't have the name wrong, but he was over there protesting against it. Great guy and loves his biltong.
It is delicious. It's like soft beef jerky. The one thing about the dried beef jerky there, I forget what the name is, but it hurts your jaw to eat it. This stuff is just freaking delicious. What else are you following, Gord? So we got the Coutts 4 or the Coutts 2 now, the trial going on. What
so
else
we have that. There's a great journalist who's covering it. His name is Mocha Bazargan.
Yep.
Young fella doing everything on his own. And Mocha and I are hoping to do a little deep dive into what's going on with the trucking industry in Canada. Many people may have noticed that over half the trucks in Canada now are piloted by guys who weren't here 10 or 20 years ago. And there's been a strange increase in truck accidents because of that. And the supply chains, there's so much trouble going on in the trucking industry, which before Freedom Convoy and the Coutts thing was my beat. Like, I'm a trucker. I've spent 27 years on the road. I started trucking when I was in high school. There's a picture I have. I took a big rig to my high school grad. You know, I've driven truck in 4 different countries. And geez, I mean, never mind trying to defend these Coutts guys and make Canada a better place. Like, I got to fix my industry. So hopefully, you know, Stephen Johnston, if you're listening to this, we know the fix is in, dude. We have all the receipts are coming in. Drop it. Just drop it. Drop the charges. This is a sham. We all know it's a sham. And, you know, there's a hot seat in hell waiting for you if you don't let these guys out and put an end to this theater.
They might like a nice sauna, Gord. If I understood the implication of what you're suggesting in terms of the trucking industry, a lot of unqualified foreigners coming in, taking the jobs, presumably at more effective salaries.
Right. And then, well, the bigger thing is that there's an indentured servitude program, right? So there's a lady who used to work for the Globe and Mail, did a report on this in 2019. There's these gangsters in Vancouver who have agents in India, and they bring these guys here, don't speak English, send them to their buddy's truck driving school for 2 weeks minimum training. This is how we ended up with the Humboldt tragedy, right? Everybody remember Humboldt? There's an entire complex devoted to basically subsuming and subverting the North American trucking industry. And like I say, this is not like I'm against foreigners. These people are being abused. They're having their visas held against them, forced to drive trucks at a much cheaper rate than what like locals would do, and thereby putting the motoring public at risk. So hopefully, if I ever get any more time, I'll be talking more about that in the future.
For the people who don't know, I just Googled it real quick. With the Humboldt tragedy, break this down for us. He was this is a Jaskira Singh Sidhu's lawyer said the decision was a foregone conclusion. What happened in this case?
What happened in that case is that one Indian guy who owned a trucking company in Calgary hired another Indian guy who only had 2 weeks of experience. He just got his class 1, as they call it in Western Canada. In Ontario, it's called the class A, and in America, it's called the CDL. This gentleman was driving what we call in the industry a Super B train, which is 2 28 or 30-foot trailers connected together with a common fifth wheel. They haul 140,000 pounds. American trucks, generally speaking, there's exceptions here and there in different states. The standard in America is 1 truck, 1 trailer, 80,000 pounds. In Canada, we might have, in addition to bigger footballs, we also have bigger, longer trucks. This guy, barely speaking a lick of English, fresh off the boat, no idea what he's doing, and he goes to work for one of his homeboys and then gets sent out across the prairie with a set of Super Bs. No graduated licensing, no training regimen, nothing, and then he kills these guys. The government does not want to listen. Again, the Globe and Mail did an expose on this 5 years ago. What has the government done about it? Nothing. So hopefully, Mocha and myself are going to crack that nut and expose more of it in the future.
Now that you bring this up, and I didn't connect these dots before, there was a big similar crash in, do I want to say Montana? I believe it was in the Rocky Mountains, of the truck that lost its brakes overheated. And
that was in Colorado a couple years ago. Yeah. They wanted to throw that guy away for like his entire life. And it turns out, again, systems, not systems that are designed to support the rich getting richer and who want to sublimate the American and the Canadian worker and de-skill everything and basically turn everybody into human resources slurry with this stupid idea you can just pull truckers off the street by having the government pay for truck driving school, right? There's a whole corporate welfare scam involved with this across the whole continent. It's not just the US, it's not just Canada. And this is one of the things I've been working on like before the Coutts thing happened. And they don't want to hear it because they don't believe in paying people that were born and live here and that have an actual skill. They just don't.
This is not the one that I'm thinking of. Semi-driver in deadly Colorado highway is illegal immigrant who was deported from U.S. Ignacio Cruz Mendoza was first on ICE's radar back in 2002.
Many such cases. This happens all the time. There was another accident here that got posted on Twitter a little while ago about a guy that killed some people in Michigan. Same thing, illegal immigrant. Why is it that people who don't have any papers are able to get a CDL? How is it you get your CDL if you don't speak English?
What's
it's
CDL?
A lingua franca commercial driver's license.
Okay.
In the United States.
Because it's so wild. Like even driving a truck versus a compact is a different experience, but not hauling something, hauling one, if not two rigs behind you. It's such a wild.
It's an actual skill, but they don't want you to think that it's a skill. They want to de-skill it and make it so that they can grab any moron off the street and put them in a truck. It's wrong. It's baloney.
Do they, I don't know, not to crack the nut before you guys crack the nut, are they also exploiting these drivers in terms of salary?
Yes, specifically the indentured servitude arrangements that are going on with all these guys in India. Again, this is old news, man. The Globe and Mail was on this in 2019, and nothing's been done. They get these guys here, get them a work visa through a provincial nomination program, and then say, go drive truck. And if you don't like it, we'll just pull your visa and send you home. So there's like a whole bunch of coercion involved here. Everyone talks about human trafficking and girls and sexual exploitation. There is literal human trafficking going on in the trucking industry in North America so that Amazon or whoever don't have to pay an extra 50 or $100 for the load to actually get somebody that knows what they're doing to pull it.
It is amazing. I've sort of been regarding the capital D Democrat immigration policy as legalized human trafficking, bring in illegals who are unable to do anything except pick vegetables and fruits, and then use them to do that, and then threaten that your fruits and vegetables will rot in the field if you don't keep the border open for illegal immigrants. And this is Jerry Nadler.
It's baloney. It's total baloney. And they're doing it with the trucking business now.
Unbelievable. In our chat at Rumble, vivabarneslaw.locals.com, Rocket Boy asks, what about the Pavlovskis? Is the state continuing their persecution of him and his family? Pavlovsky's trial's not yet over, right? No, hold on. Pavlovsky had his trial. He got sentenced to time served.
Right. Pavlovsky is cited in a lot of these documents that came out that basically the RCMP has been casing that guy and harassing him since the word go, right?
I'm sure since he called them Gestapo Nazis, which
was he wrong? Wrong?
You know what? That's one of the things where I've come around 180. At the time, I said, "Hey, you really shouldn't use this type of language. It's not productive." I'm sorry. When people are acting like Gestapo Nazis, you call them Gestapo Nazis, and he was, way ahead of the curve. But unfortunately,
the beginning of knowledge is to call things by their proper name.
Did you just make that up?
No.
Who said that? Hold on, let me get that.
Look, I can't remember what philosopher came up with it. Or if it's in the Bible.
Knowledge is to call things by their proper name. Quote attributed to Confucius. Okay,
there you go,
dude. I'm not forgetting that anytime soon. Yep. If you have a penis, you're a boy.
Right.
Not her penis and not his vagina, ladies and gentlemen. Gord, amazing. I don't want to keep you too long, and I want to fix my hair. So, okay, you're doing that. That's going to be amazing. You got a Substack. You'll send me all of your links. I'm going to put them in the pinned comment.
Right.
Other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how's life right now? How are things working you're in New York State?
Yeah. So I'm married, wonderful wife, Jenna. I have a daughter named Vivian, who's 6, and another daughter named Georgia, who's 4. We're both very busy. My wife is a school teacher, and she works extra for the local school district. Over and above that, we are the definition of harried working parents. I got laid off from my last trucking job because the economy's doing so good last July. I haven't turned the wheel. The trucking industry is a shit show, and I don't believe anybody in it other than a very small, tiny percentage of it deserves my service anyway. So I'm helping my in-laws with their family businesses. Before I came on this show, I was at Cornell University doing a renovation project there with my brother-in-law. So I'm just trying to hustle like everybody else and make time to help my people back home. Like the whole thing with the Freedom Convoy, man, was like, they're my people. They're my class associates, working people that make shit move, that make our society function, and truckers, let's not forget, are by law prevented from being paid overtime. They work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. After 40 hours, they don't get any overtime. They get paid by the mile or by the rate or by the load, whatever. So the people who would nominally not be protesters, who would nominally just keep their heads down and work their asses off, got attacked by the government of Justin Trudeau. Not on my watch, motherfucker.
I like you, Gord. We will hang. I mean, now, are you not thinking of getting the hell out of New York because you see what's happening?
Well, I mean, I've got family here, and sometimes other considerations besides politics dictate how you live your life.
Absolutely, and it's I finessed that point with my wife, where if you had asked her 3 years ago, would you live in Florida, she would have said hell no. 2 years ago, well, Viva's been making a lot of jokes about it, and then I guess it's 4 years ago now. I want to share this comment because this was my initial thought, Gord. They are going to rake up all the accident data points to support the necessity for automated trucks market.
That's exactly what's happening. They're trying to basically screw us with underpaid labor, either swept off the street through these programs that are paid for by the state or with immigrants from the third world. And then when they turn the switch on with automated trucks, buy it, see you later. And they're going to use all of these accident statistics to justify what they're doing. That's exactly what's going on. Whoever made that comment, thank you for paying attention. Good for you.
Sammy, Sahmee. Here's the question, and asking her, I slowly go through intersections looking to see if anybody's careening through. What are the biggest risks, and where should you be on the lookout for, let's say, trucks in particular?
At all times. You 27 years, never been involved in a collision. Truck driving career, okay? Full-time situational awareness. Drive slow, don't be in a hurry. I have one speed, 60 miles an hour. Interstate 2-lane, doesn't matter. Cruise control, always watching. Always paying attention. Nothing is going to replace that. Your front brake collision avoidance system, your lane control, all of that stuff is a psyop, and it's fucking garbage. The best way to be a good driver is to pay attention and be taught properly, drive slow, and just interact as you're navigating material reality. All this tech stuff ain't going to help you. You have to be a better driver.
It almost impedes it because you have like ABS, and it will enact, or what is not the word enact, it will trigger when you don't want.
There's a great book. So one of my friends online, great writer, is a guy named Matthew B. Crawford. He wrote a book that came out in 2020 called Why We Drive that talks about all of this stuff. And I only wish, or maybe it came out in early 2022. I only wish it would have came out just after the Freedom Convoy, because although he doesn't specifically talk about truckers, he talks about all of the imposition of this tech stuff, the surveillance, what they're doing to try and convince you that, it's all for your safety, while they take away more of your agency as a human being going about your business, right? Excellent book. Can't recommend it enough. Everybody go read Why We Drive.
Amazing. Gord, you're going to send me all of your links. I'm going to put them in the pinned comment. What else? We're going to obviously have to do a part 2 because there will be
God willing, these guys walk out as free men very soon.
Touch wood, from your mouth to God's ears, Gord. Everybody, thank you very much. There will be no after party on Locals. I'll do something separate later. I want to talk with Gord a little bit off air. Gord, thank you very much. It's been fantastic. I'm commencing my journey back behind the Iron Curtain as of tomorrow. So I don't know. I said I was going to not go through New York State to boycott what they have done to Trump, but I think that adds a little bit too much to the journey. But Gord, stick around. We'll say our proper goodbyes. Everybody out there, thank you for tuning in. This has been fantastic, and we'll be following the story. Gord, keep on keeping on, man.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Viva. I really appreciate the opportunity. Like I said, if anybody's got a couple bucks to spare, Give, Send, Go. Trudeau's political prisoners. They need all the help you can get.
That link is going in the pinned comment as well. So, Gord, stick around. We'll talk for a bit afterwards. Everybody out there, enjoy the day. See you soon.